Welcome again to the Museum Roadshow. We're concluding our stories this week about the history of Daggett Truckline at Frazee, Minnesota.
The lumber mill closed in, I believe, 1917 or 1918, and Grandpa Daggett had all these teams of horses and men working for him, and he had to do something. And so that's when he started doing the grading on the roads. He did up in the Menominee-Waban area. He did south of, up in the Cotton Lake area. Went down by Perm on Highway 78 north of the river, there a ways. Dad was 12 years old. He would get up early in the morning. They would have to get the horses harnessed, have breakfast, and be ready to go at daybreak. Dad told me the story where he was pulling a dump wagon, probably a yard and a half of gravel in the dump wagon, and he hit a bump or something. He fell off the wagon and he was knocked unconscious. When he came to, the wheel was right next to his head. Now the horses stopped the minute that he dropped the reins, so we always wondered what could have happened. The first, what we call Western movement of cattle was in this time of the year in 1955. At the time Dad had 20 trucks, and he took 19 of them out to Killdeer, North Dakota, which is located north of Dickinson, maybe 40 miles. One of the drivers told me this story. They got out there, and Dad got rooms for everybody, and he took everybody for steaks. And he said you could each have 2 drinks, and that was it. And anyway, this driver, Lloyd Dretch, and another driver, Shorty Garlock, was sitting with a buyer who was with them at that time, involved with this movement of cattle, and the buyer wanted to buy them each a drink. And Lloyd said, I've had the 2 drinks. No, he said, I want to buy you guys a drink. He pulled out a $20 bill, ordered 3 drinks for himself and the 2 drivers. Lloyd told me, he said, I knew right then when the waitress brought the tray with the drinks and the change for the $20 bill, the drinks were probably 20 cents then, I felt the presence of somebody behind me. I didn't look. I knew who it was. It was the old man. He said, Vern said, Pick, Shorty, you can finish your drinks. And he said to the waitress, ma'am, how's business been? She said, up until tonight it's been fairly slow, but this business tonight has really been great for us. Thank you. And he said, Red, that's mighty nice of you to tell her, keep the change. We'll come here again. Red wanted to reach for that money, Pick said, but he didn't dare do it because Vern was looking very sternly at him. And Red did not pick up the money. The next morning, all the drivers were ready to go at daybreak, breakfast under their belts, and they started that haul.
That was a deal that these were yearling type livestock, all had been railed to South St. Paul or to Sioux City, Iowa. And that fall, the railroad says, we aren't going to have the rail cars for you. And every weekend for about 6 weeks, there was a steady movement of livestock trucks across North Dakota going to either St. Paul or Sioux City. And that movement never did go back to the rails. Trucks got the inroad there, and they maintained it. And the railroads at that time had a hard time hauling perishables because so often things would get lost. A truck driver would hook on a load of cattle and stay with it until it was delivered, and he took care of it. It was not unusual, especially hauling dairy cattle to Arizona or Texas, for us to deliver more livestock than we loaded. These people would ship these springing heifers, and usually about Kansas or Oklahoma, the driver would have to get in the trailer and help deliver a calf. The picture there of the 3 trucks, that was taken about, I guess this is 38. 2 internationals and a federal. And Dad would buy a flatbed trailer from Fruhoff in Detroit, Michigan, and bring it back to Frazee, and then they'd build a livestock rack on it. So those trailers are all home-built cattle trailers. The stockyards opened in West Fargo, North Dakota in 1935. The trucks would be used to haul mostly slaughter cattle to packing plants in St. Paul and Austin. And then on Saturday they hauled horses, 3 loads of horses to Anoka, Minnesota, where there was a horse killer plant. As I said, my grandfather was a land person, thought that the trucks would never amount to anything. My other grandfather told my father, he said, well, he said, if you ever get this built up to anything, the rails will come along, cut the rates, and put you out of business. You're wasting your time. A couple of the older drivers told me a story many years ago. They said we went to Austin and back in 24 hours. And he said, we got back to Frazee, and your grandfather, old D.W., said, boy, you'll never make any money on that because it takes so long to make the trip. So he said, the next trip we made, we didn't stop for anything. And we made the round trip in 18 hours. They took 6 hours off the travel time. Grandpa Daggett was at the station again at the time when they got back, and he said, you never make any money at that. You burn all the rubber off the tires going that fast. So he was a hard person to please. And that's kind of a trait of a male Daggett, I guess, because sometimes we're hard to please.
No pictures there of blizzards, but trucks would have to tie up. Dad always said, tie it up. Don't go out if you don't feel you have to. Be careful. But they'd be tied up for sometimes 2, 3, 4 days in storms. And the driver, we'd get letters where the driver would go out and check the cattle, make sure the cattle did not lie down in the trailer. They'd keep them up, and they'd always try to park them out of the wind in between other semi-trailers. And the drivers would really keep the load safe and alive. And it was important. So there's the traveling billboard. There's the Explore Minnesota trailer. I think in 1997, Fred Daggett, another generation of Daggetts now, came with the idea and thought about promoting the state of Minnesota. At the time, my wife Roxanne was our state representative, and he contacted her, and she contacted the state tourism director, and they thought it was a great idea. So we had a billboard for basically about 8 or 10 years driving throughout the United States with Explore Minnesota, and Fred came up with the slogan for a change of pace, try a change of seasons. And so there's the picture of the billboard with Fred and myself, and I believe Chris Daggett is on that photograph there.
That was on a reefer trailer, which we haul a lot of frozen goods. So I said, that trailer helps keep Minnesota cold.
Thanks for watching our series on the Daggett Truckline. When you see red and green on the livestock scene, it's another Daggett truckload.